Sammy, please gather some wood for our fire tonight.
Solomon Skunk called out to his son. Young Sammy Skunk could not have been more delighted as he scampered off into the brush, for tonight was outdoor cookout night over an open fire. And best of all, Sammy and his parents would continue to enjoy the fire long after dinner, telling stories, laughing, and best of all, s'mores! Solomon returned into their humble home, walking up to the kitchen counter where his beautiful wife, Sylvia Skunk, was preparing vegetables for dinner. Giving her a kiss on the cheek, Solomon spoke.
Sammy gets so excited on campfire night.
Oh, he just loves it.
Replied Sylvia.
And he so loves the creative new stories that you always write for him. Come to mention, you usually tell me about your new story, but this time you haven't even shared an outline of the plot.
Not to worry,
Replied Solomon.
I'll be ready to tell Sammy a great new story after our campfire dinner tonight.
With that, Solomon gave Sylvia another kiss and made his way outdoors to prepare the fire. Solomon was thinking to himself as he slowly approached the fire pit that he better come up with something soon. He usually had his new story laid out days in advance of campfire night, but this time he was struggling to create something new. Perhaps I can ask the great creator to help me conjure up some ideas, he thought. Yes, he continued to ponder, the great creator has never let me down in the past. While Solomon was preparing the base of the fire, Sammy returned with a bundle of wood, laying it down beside him.
Dad,
Asked Sammy.
why is it that we live so far away from all the other creatures in the forest? I know that there are others living in these woods that we share, but I never see them and I don't have any friends.
Solomon paused in thought for a moment, then turned to look lovingly at his son.
Sammy,
He said,
by nature we are a shy creature. We have a certain way about us that makes many of the other creatures sometimes feel uncomfortable. It's not that we don't want to have friends, but when many of the other creatures see us approaching, they walk away in the other direction. They don't really know us, but rather than make them feel uncomfortable with us, we try to respect them and keep to ourselves.
Is that why we live in such a far corner of the forest, Dad?
asked Sammy.
I suppose so, son.
Well, I suppose that's pretty considerate of us.
Well, pondered Sammy aloud, I suppose that is very considerate of us. Solomon smiled at his son, attempting to hide his sadness, however, also being very proud of how kind and thoughtful his young skunk had become.
Soup's on.
Called Sylvia as she exited their cottage with a tray full of food all ready for cooking.
We just need a bit more wood for our fire to last well into the evening. The sun is starting to set, and we'd best get it before it gets too dark.
Solomon said to his son,
You bet, Dad.
and Sammy rushed off into the bush to gather more fallen logs and twigs. Rummaging around in the forest, Sammy looked out through the thick brush and watched his mother and father. Dad was arranging the old coals, twigs, and leaves that will serve as a good base to build a fire upon, while Mom placed the tray on the table. Sammy watched as his mother turned to face Dad, and as she smiled at him and walked up beside Solomon. She leaned in close and kissed him on the cheek.
This'll be a lovely fire, dear. I can't wait to hear your new story.
She teased.
It's coming, dear.
Solomon smiled back at her. Sammy sat mesmerized and delighted with a kind smile on his face as he watched his parents enjoy each other. As he stared on, the beaming smile began to fade from Sammy's face, however, and was replaced by an expression of shock and horror. A bright red light filled the area where the campfire was soon to be. Sammy saw his mother and father get captured by the red light, and in an instant they seemed to be shrunk in size and sucked into a tiny little box-like prison. Sammy saw a cloaked figure holding the cage as the red beam disappeared. The figure turned around and effortlessly glided away from the cottage, leaving behind an empty yard. A hideous cackling laugh could be heard from the disappearing figure that would send shivers up anyone's spine. Sammy sat in shock, not knowing what to do. He had no idea of what he just witnessed from his spot in the bush, but he was scared. After a minute, Sammy crept out from his hiding spot and approached the cottage.
Mom?
Sammy called out in a meek voice.
Dad?
Sammy looked around and stared at the tray of food his mother was preparing. He turned and looked where the fire was supposed to be and gazed at the teepee of twigs and leaves that was soon to be a beautiful fire.
Mom? Dad?
Sammy now called out in a loud voice. There was no response. Feeling more alone than he had in his entire life, Sammy sat down next to the unlit fire and quietly cried. Sammy was alone. He had learned all about building and maintaining fires from his dad, and even had the nickname of Fire Marshal, which his dad affectionately called him every time Sammy maintained the fire. He needed the warm flame and crackling sound of a nice fire to accompany him as the night air was getting a little bit cool. He sat gazing into his cozy fire, but was unable to bring himself to cook or eat any of the food. He sat for hours, thinking about his parents, eventually drifting off to sleep. Morning finally came as the early sun started to peek over the horizon of the forest. Having skipped dinner, Sammy was very hungry. He remembered all the fine food Mom had prepared for the barbecue, and his stomach began to rumble and growl with hunger.
What would Dad do?
Sammy thought to himself.
Well, Dad is very thoughtful. Dad is very kind. Dad is very wise. And Dad was a great builder. That's it.
Sammy cried out loud to the empty forest around their cottage.
Dad would not sit still and mope. I'll build a plan, and by golly, I'm going to rescue my mom and dad. As sure as I'm Sammy the Skunk, I promise that I will rescue my mom and dad.
Determinedly, Sammy started his fire and cooked up all the nice food that Mom had prepared and ate a hearty breakfast. Feeling full and strong, he carefully doused his fire and set off into the forest in the direction of that disappearing figure. Freddie, Beatrice, and Martha sat on their new patio outside of Beatrice's place, enjoying their time with their new friend Danny. Danny had grown into such a strong young deer that he could never fit inside the tiny house where the three old friends used to enjoy each other's company. They quickly decided a new sitting area was in order, and before long a beautiful garden and patio equipped with comfy chairs was built. The only problem was that as the sun set, it got a little too chilly to sit outside in the evening. Instead of moving the fun conversation up into Beatrice's house and leaving Danny alone, Freddie, Beatrice, and Martha also decided to just go home. They did miss each other when returning to their empty houses, and wished they could spend longer times together. As the days rolled on, all four friends became quite close to each other. They loved each other's company and became inseparable. Sammy, on the other hand, was still alone and wandering the forest in search of his parents. He managed to find food as his mother had taught him so well what to eat and how to prepare it. He was also used to not having friends, but what he could never get used to was not having Mom and Dad around. He missed them terribly, and this gave him the strength to continue on. One afternoon, as the sun was starting to get low, he heard some strange sounds coming from across a part of the forest.
This is it.
He thought.
I found where that thing lives that took Mom and Dad.
Determined, Sammy crept up closer and closer to the source of the sounds.
I'll catch them soon,
Sammy thought. Inch by inch, he got closer and closer until he could see where the sounds were coming from. A very soft and quick, beautiful blue glow lightly illuminated the area where the sounds were coming from.
This is a strikingly different color from the red glare that took Mom and Dad.
Sammy thought.
I'd better watch them for a while before I make any moves.
Meanwhile, Danny, Martha, and Beatrice were sitting on the patio sharing a laugh and chatting in voices that almost sang. Only Freddie sat motionless, with one eyebrow cocked in that typical fashion that he is known to display.
Freddie,
Called Martha.
why so glum when we're having so much fun?
Oh, I am not glum at all, Martha, my dear. I am merely waiting in anticipation of something great that will soon come,
Replied Freddie. The other three looked at each other and shrugged their shoulders. Before long, their conversation picked back up, and the three began laughing again, while Freddie remained stoically still and listening. Sammy could hear the conversation coming from the group, but he did not have the best eyesight. He listened to what he thought were very strange conversations. They didn't seem to be talking about anything important, but they did seem to be having a lot of fun. This certainly did not fit the impression he has of the thing that stole his parents. While the others continued chatting, not moving, with his eyebrows still cocked, Freddie stated in a low, kind voice,
Why don't you join us, friend?
Sammy has an excellent sense of smell, but also an excellent sense of hearing. After Freddie had spoken, he became very curious as the other three voices he had been listening to appeared to not even hear what the fourth voice had said. Again, Freddie stated quite kindly,
Please, join us, friend.
At this, Danny looked over, asking Freddie.
Who are you talking to?
Beatrice leaned into Martha and in a hushed voice whispered,
Perhaps he's gone mad again.
Martha chuckled at Beatrice's joke as they both remembered the time they all met. Freddie heard too, but responded to Danny,
Why, I'm talking to our friend sitting in the forest behind us. He's been there for a while now, but I fear he is too timid to join us.
At this, Sammy gasped and stepped back, causing some twigs to break. This ruined his cover, and all four friends now knew that someone was in the dark of the forest, watching them.
Who's there?
Danny yelled out in a brave voice and stood up menacingly. This indeed scared Sammy, and he quickly turned to run.
Stop.
Yelled Freddie. However, there was nothing menacing about the way Freddie called.
We are your friends, and I insist that you join us.
Danny still stood guard, but Beatrice and Martha looked at each other and put their full trust in Freddie. Beatrice called out loudly in her sweetest voice,
Yes, please, join us, friend.
Sammy didn't know what to do, but he knew this was not the villain he was searching for. He was very lonely, and this soft blue light and kind words made him think of his father. Remembering that his father told him other creatures would walk away if they saw skunks, these folks were clearly different. Dad would give them a chance. At this, Sammy slowly started to waddle forward out of his hiding spot. The four friends stood facing the forest, waiting as a shadow slowly started to appear. As it approached, its form was beginning to become more apparent. A moment later, and Danny, Martha, and Beatrice gasped in unison.
A skunk.
Said Martha with a gulp. Sammy halted, but Freddie reached out and walked up to him. Placing his hand on Sammy's shoulder, he again said,
Come, my friend. I have been waiting for you.
For me?
Stammered Sammy.
Indeed. I know who you are, and you are going to be a very important person in our family of friends here.
With that, Sammy joined the circle of friends as they sat on their comfy chairs.
Why are you all alone in the forest at this hour?
Asked Danny, who now looked more concerned rather than menacing as earlier. At this, Sammy told the story of how he was in the forest gathering wood for a wonderful evening his family had planned, how he was hidden when the terrible red light shone so bright, and how his parents seemed to disappear. The other four listened with rapt interest as Sammy told them of his quest to save his parents, and how he had managed to survive on his own since his parents were taken. When Sammy finally concluded explaining how he ended up there, Martha exclaimed with love in her heart,
Oh, you poor dear. You're welcome to stay with us for as long as you want.
Sammy smiled. This was the first kind thing anyone other than Mom and Dad had ever said to him.
Well, not now, though.
Cautioned Beatrice.
The sun has now set and it's getting chilly.
Well, why not light a fire?
Asked Sammy.
Light a fire? How on earth do you do that?
Beatrice returned.
It's easy. I'll show you.
Beamed Sammy.
But I would sure appreciate your help.
You just name it.
Said Freddie with a huge smile on his face. Sammy gave directions for the team to gather as many leaves, twigs, and branches as they could find while he rummaged around for a bit of flint rock. Soon enough, the five of them were sitting around a warm, crackling fire that lit up the patio and provided great warmth. For at least a short time this evening, Sammy had forgotten all his troubles and delighted in the loving conversations with his four new friends. Before long, Danny, who also has a keen sense of smell, curiously lifted his head to the starry night, sniffing the air. Something did not smell right, and he immediately thought of that troubling witch. He alerted his friends, but poor Sammy just slumped down in his chair looking very embarrassed.
Oh, I'm sorry.
He said, ashamed of what he just did.
You skunks kind of smell like that, Lil, if we're not careful. I guess that just slipped out.
You haven't smelled anything yet. Our new friend can pack quite a punch when he means to do it, and at some point we are going to need to punch when we battle the witch.
Beatrice, Martha, and Danny realized what an important asset Sammy will be in their quest. Not only that, but they truly believed that Sammy was kind, wise, and indeed a great builder. They sat together a while longer until bedtime truly did arrive. Each said their goodnights and proceeded towards their homes. Sammy didn't move, however, Freddie turned to him saying,
Come, you are staying with me.
Sammy waddled off alongside of Freddie with true gratitude.
Tell Freddie, what was this witch you spoke of?
As Sammy entered into Freddie's home, he was shown the comfortable bed that Freddie had given him and put the kettle on for a nice pot of tea that the two friends would share over the next hour, as Freddie told Sammy all about the witch and what is happening in the forest. When Sammy finally retired to bed, he thanked the great creator for the new friends that he now has, and their united quest to rescue Sammy's mother and father and rid the forest of the horrible witch.